Well, it seems like the whole world is just going freaking insane, and here I am, sitting in my car doing another vlog, and I'm not even going to talk about how insane the world is. I'm going to talk about a book that I just finished reading, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Okay, so, again, this is the Colorblind Architect Podcast. I'm your host, David. Let's get that over. Okay, so, I wanted to do this book review largely because this was kind of a fascinating book. So it was loaned to me by a friend, and I kept hearing about it on Carl Benjamin's YouTube channel, otherwise known as Sargon of Akkad. I think he's now going by the name Lotus Eaters for his YouTube channel. Whatever. But he kept on saying, you gotta read it. And so when my friend lent it to me, I thought, okay, sure, I'll read it. And my first feeling about this book is, it was a little bit of a letdown. First, it was a letdown in the fact that, frankly, John Perkins, the author of this book, man, he thinks too much of himself. He sure seemed like he sure seems like he feels like he's like the greatest thing to come about. And although I'll give him props for what he felt was his own complicity in an economic conspiracy to destroy other countries, and the fact that he's trying to make amends, sure, if you believe that, I have a hard time believing it. Now, with that said, let's talk about what he means by an economic hitman. So, an economic hitman was basically this idea that there's these people out there that are hired by the U.S. government to go out and sell the idea of infrastructure improvements to poor countries that will then take on these massive debts from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund and sometimes even USAID, federal government, and essentially debt trap them so that they're constantly subservient to the U.S. because they've got this debt to the U.S. And that part, is the part about debt trap diplomacy is somewhat believable. Okay, I can see that. After all, China's been doing the same thing. They've been doing that in recent years, and so it's not too surprising that you would have America doing that as well. I'm sure the Russians were doing it when they were the Soviet Union, and they might even still be doing it today. I'm sure the British did it back when they were. an empire power, and possibly still doing it today. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of countries do this in order to curry favor, get other countries to basically become dependent on them and subservient to them. So that part, I'm fine. So the first part that I found extremely unbelievable about the book was how he said that he was recruited by the NSA and that he was actually told that he was being recruited as an EHM, an economic hitman. And somehow he signed on to it. See, the part that I don't understand is, why on earth would the NSA just come out and say it? Why wouldn't they be a little bit more, have a little bit more subterfuge? Maybe express a little bit more clandestinishness, in the way they refer to it. The idea that somebody would actually come out, say it right out and open to them, sounds really suspicious. So that was the first red flag for me. And then many, many, many pages of really boring personal stories of meeting all these different people in different countries. And while some of it was interesting and it was cool that he was, he described so many different stories from different places, but he did so in a pretty boring way. Towards the end was the part that lost me again. Towards the end was where he started describing all the crimes of politicians that that were engaging in this kind of stuff, and he mentions George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and stuff like that. Mind you, this was written in, this was released in, I think, 2003, 2004. And so obviously it was really popular on the left to criticize Dick Cheney and George W. Bush. So anyways, and yeah, let me just double check that. That is 2004. Yes, 2004. So it was really popular back in those days. I mean, it was right after the Iraq War invasion. So obviously there was a lot of leftists who were very anti the Iraq War at that time. I think nowadays a lot of right-wingers have also become kind of anti-Iraq War as well. So, in all fairness, you could say that the leftists kind of led the charge on that. However, the other thing that really disturbed me, because let's face it, if you're going to try to say that there's politicians who are in on this and that they're doing this crap and that they're promulgating this debt trap diplomacy type stuff and saying that it's both parties, but then you get to the part where you talk about Bill and Hillary Clinton and you say that there was nothing wrong with them and it was a conspiracy that the right went after him with Monica Lewinsky. Ugh! You have got to freaking be kidding me. I mean, Mr. John Perkins, if you're still alive, I don't know if you are. I didn't bother checking because, frankly, I don't care about you. But here's the thing. That was not a conspiracy. Bill had relations with Monica Lewinsky of his own free will and choice. Monica Lewinsky was a staffer in the White House, and she was very much a Clintonite. She liked the Clintons. So the idea that somehow Monica Lewinsky was a right-wing conspiracy to take out Bill Clinton is the epitome of, you are a partisan hack, Mr. John Perkins. So, yeah, sorry. Ain't buying any of your book. I ain't believing any of it, because that right there tells me that you're not an honest broker. If you can't simultaneously... Oh, by the way, he also talked glowingly about Jimmy Carter. That should tell you something. Look, if you're not criticizing both parties, then you're probably a partisan hack. Now, obviously, I lean right. I typically vote Republican, so... you can probably guess that I'm going to have more to complain about with the Democrats than I do with the Republicans. But with that said, I'll gladly complain about the Republicans. They're not glowing or anything. They're actually really obnoxiously just ineffectual idiots. Some of them. And then some of them aren't even ineffectual idiots. Some of them are simply liars. They are pretending to be conservatives just so that they can get elected, and then they go do their elitist stuff anyways. Mitch McConnell's a perfect example of that. He is absolutely the quintessential blue blood Republican, where he just does whatever the hell the elitists in Washington want to do, and then tries to play the game so that he keeps getting elected, and he'll do just enough in an election year so that his voters don't throw him out. Well, frankly, I'm done with people like Mitch McConnell. I'm here in Utah. I will tell you right now, I'm going to fight as hard as I can to primary out Mitt Romney. I mean, I'm not going to run for anything because I don't do that. But I'll definitely be engaged in the Republican Party primaries and trying to get Mitt Romney out because I find him to be disgusting. He is such a slimy weasel of a politician. And he has been for a long time. It's just sometimes in an election year, you vote against your conscience, even though you're just you really don't want to, but you feel like you have to. Take, for example, in 2012, I hate to admit I voted for Mitt Romney for president. Why? Because I felt like we needed to defeat Barack Obama. But it made me feel dirty voting for him. And ironically, I did not vote for Donald Trump in 2016, even though he turned out to be a much better president than I expected. And to all the criticism that he's getting right now, frankly, he's been one of our best presidents ever, despite the fact his character flaws are obvious. I mean, like, he kind of wears his character flaws on his face and on his shirt. I mean, it's like he's openly flawed. And yet, he'll do some amazing things, and you go like, oh, well, do I care what he says, or do I care what he does? And in my case, for 2020, I realized, well, you know what? Yeah, Joe Biden, he talks the talk, but he's been a plagiarist for the longest time. I mean, that's actually why he dropped out of the 1988 presidential bid, was because he was caught plagiarizing. And he's run for president so many times. It's obvious that he really wants this. He wants power, which is really dangerous. Now, granted, Donald Trump, in all fairness, he ran for president multiple times. He had talked about running for president for many years. So it's not like Joe Biden's alone in that. But Joe Biden, he's corrupt, and his actual acts, the things that he actually does, are corrupt. Even though he talks nice. Whereas if you look at Donald Trump, he talks atrociously. I'm not gonna lie. I cringe when he talks. But then the things he does politically, like the things that he does like actually in governance, the way he governed this country, lowering taxes, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which it is, creating the Abraham Accords, bringing more peace negotiations to the Middle East. I mean, these were big things. And he also was on the side of the Hong Kong democracy protesters. He was also on the side of, Taiwan. He's been trying to help out blue-collar workers by protecting them from, slave labor in China. And, granted, I'm not a big tariff fan, but here's the thing. If you're going to have free trade, you need to actually have free trade between somewhat equal countries. Like, as in, they're both on the same platform of ideas and laws. Whereas China, they've got slave labor. They're treating their citizens like crap. It's run by a criminal organization known as the Chinese Communist Party. And so, with that said, how can you have free trade with a country that steals your technology, is run by a kleptocratic mob, a criminal organization, a mafia-style organization like the CCP? It's not fair. It's not free trade. So in that case, what he did was absolutely right in, doing economic punishment in the form of tariffs on China. And it's sort of worked. Now, unfortunately, Biden's going to come in because, Biden is totally in bed with Xi Jinping. He's totally in bed with the Chinese Communist Party. And don't give me that crap and tell me that he's not. He is. I can find the pictures, and it's obvious from the Hunter Biden laptop that Hunter Biden was collecting tons of money from the Chinese Communist Party that ended up going to, a lot of it went to Biden, Joe Biden. There may not be direct proof, but come on, seriously? Do you really think the Chinese Communist Party was giving $1 billion to Hunter Biden just because they thought Hunter Biden was a good investment? No, it was because Joe Biden was the vice president of the United States, and they knew that they couldn't give it straight to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden knew that he couldn't take it. So, of course, what does he do? He has Hunter Biden fly on Air Force Two with him to China, and so while Hunter Biden's off meeting with the president of the Bank of China getting $1 billion investment, Joe Biden's meeting with somebody else. And then later on, they do actually have a dinner together, even though supposedly there was no knowledge. Yeah. Yeah, Joe. Yeah, we're on to you. And see, here's the thing. We're about to inaugurate this total dirt jerkwad. I mean, look, I'm trying to keep the language down. I've been really trying to get better about not cursing so much. But I look at this and I'm just like, we are about to inaugurate one of the most certifiably corrupt people to become president before he ever became president. I mean, there's been a lot of corruption in U.S. history, with American presidents. But this one is the one that we know. We know for a fact that he is corrupt. And yet we're inaugurating him anyways. And worse yet, he's corrupt not from domestic corruption. No, we know for a fact that he is corrupt from foreign money. He's being given foreign money, which is a direct violation of the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution. And this is the part where I'm like, okay, yeah, well, we're screwed. Yeah, I mean, we're just screwed. With all that said, I look at all this stuff and I think, I still feel okay. I still feel at peace. And I don't know why. In my head, I feel like we should be all panicking. But in my heart, I'm at peace. Which is a really interesting thing. I imagine that some of that is because I understand the relationship between me and God. And I understand that in the end, God wins. And I know for people who are atheists, that's probably a hard concept to pick out and to understand. You're probably thinking I'm, deluded in a God fantasy. And maybe. I don't know. But when it comes right down to it, it doesn't change the fact that I still feel at peace. That somehow I know everything's going to work out. Somehow, we're going to get through this. Now, if that means I'm going to get through it by being able to be one of those, people who survive, not giving in to the bitter end, even though I'm in the gulag, and being thrown in the gas chambers, for believing in what I believe in, and being true to the end. Okay, maybe I don't know. All I know is I've got that feeling of peace. And with that said, again, do not buy this book. Okay? Just a reminder, do not buy this book. If you really want to read it, which it's okay if you do, get it from the library. That way you're not paying this guy any royalties. Okay? And with that, I say, I'm the Color of Blind Architect. Peace out.